My guest on this week's episode of Suds Search is Justin Sanger, founder and CEO of SMBchain. Justin is a serial entrepreneur who's dedicated his professional life to solving marketing challenges facing small businesses. This is Justin's second appearance on the show. He founded Local Launch back in 2003. Local Launch capitalized on the massive shift from print to digital. I started my career at Local Launch, and I was captivated by Justin's foresight then, and I still find him to be one of the most fascinating people in the industry. What's he doing with SMBchain, you might be asking? Justin looks at the promise of Web3 and blockchain technology as the next big frontier for innovation that can improve people's lives. Crypto, blockchain, Web3, NFTs, these are some of the most popular topics on social media. There are skeptics, there are people investing large sums of money into it, and there are plenty of people who don't get it at all. I've wanted to have a conversation like this one for a while, but I needed someone with Justin's level of expertise to do it right. This episode isn't only about Web3. It's also about how Justin is positioning SMBchain to solve a major problem for small businesses. In short, he thinks SMBs should own their own data online, and he's on a quest to make sure that they can. Grab something cold to drink and join me for a conversation with Justin Sanger. We'll talk about the enormous potential for Web3. He'll tell me about SMBchain's proof of business concept, and we'll spend a little time talking about how SMBs can regain their authenticity online. Well, Justin Sanger, welcome to Suds Search. I should say, welcome back to Suds Search. How have you been?
Thank you, Mark. I'm good. I feel confident and encouraged about, the new year and what's ahead of us all. And I think, last time we talked, we were in the thick of things with COVID, and we were moving towards decentralization. The Steelers were doing really good, so a lot has changed. But I felt great. It's great to see you again, brother.
Likewise. And there's so much I want to cover. I'm going to try. I probably did more prep for this interview than anyone I've ever done. It feels like I've got a returning champion here back on my show. So I want to be careful about how I present this topic, but this is what everyone is talking about. Web3, crypto, blockchain. Before we get into SMBchain, which is your new venture, and I'm really excited to talk about it, I think there are some table setting that needs to be done. For one thing, there are skeptics. There are people like you who are putting massive resources into this space. And then there are a bunch of people who just don't know it, just don't know what they don't know. And so I one of the things I've known you for 15 years, you have an amazing talent for explaining something complex and macro and making it very accessible, making it be able to touch it and feel it. Yeah, I wonder if you could help me with some definitions and some terminology. So the first thing, we're going to talk a lot about Web3. I'm going to use that term a lot, and that intimates an evolution, i.e. from Web 1, Web 2, now Web 3. If you could, for our audience, describe that evolution.
I appreciate that. And I think that it's important to do the blocking and tackling right now.
Yes, right.
It's important to do the A, Bs, and Cs. You see a lot of, overzealous behavior. You see a lot of young individuals racing, to riches. And we all know that the reality is that shortcuts ultimately, are turns that you need to be concerned about or aware of. There's not many, good shortcuts in life. And so with that in mind, I think everyone's waking up to, the fact that, what everyone's looking at is important. And so with that in mind, we have to go back to the basics. But, Mark, jargon is part of the problem. Trying to put too much definition around things is part of the problem, because I might define it one way and you might hear somebody else that defines the exact same thing, similarly, but they might be entirely different. So you have to be very, very careful here. And so, the way I think I talk about it differently, and I think we need to think about it differently. This concept of Web3 really, it's been here the whole time, to a large degree. The idealism that underwrote Web 1 was about the concepts of decentralization. It was about the concepts of access. It was about the concepts of ownership. It was about the concepts of knowledge. Along the way, those ideas have been, taken away by centralized entities and powers and structures, both, public as well as private, of corporations as well as, institutions.
Yeah.
And so one could argue, and it's important to start this way, I feel, based upon your question, that Web3 has always been here.
Yeah.
This morning I pointed to an organization called Pointcast, and I don't know whether you remember that or not, but when those of us who saw it back in the, I think it was 96 that it was launched to the public, but founded in 92, it was pushing content out to the user right from a desktop environment. But as the story goes, the bandwidth just wasn't there. But it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And it, like many stories in this space, you have a great, entrepreneur with incredible ideas doing the right thing, and their ideas somehow, got gobbled up along the way by big interests. The point here is that he was pushing unique content out. Pointcast in particular was pushing unique content out to users, on a personalized basis, bypassing news feeds, bypassing Google, bypassing having to search, bypassing having to go to social to weed through what is right, and just delivering through, another interesting issue here is the RSS, right? We had ways by which to syndicate content real simply back in the day that afforded us this deep level of personalization, which kind of begets ownership. And the irony about what's happening now is that's what we're after again. Somehow along the way, it's been taken from us. So before one gets carried away that what everyone's talking about is so new and so foreign and so difficult to understand, it's better to realize that no, it's exactly what you think the internet should have been. It's exactly what you likely want. And it's really a matter of our getting out there and effectively, reclaiming it. And, I think largely we have. The question is, how do we begin to restructure it in a manner which will prevent this from occurring again in the future?
Fascinating.
So, look, Web 1, you hear it. I think, Mr. Dixon, you guys can look him up. He is, like others, have been very vocal in Web3 principles. You guys can hunt down the names. There's some that are more vocal, and there's base definitions around Web 1 being a read environment, Web 2 being a write environment, and then Web 3 being a own environment. And I think that's a fine way to think about it. But my argument is it's too fine, because Web 1 was about own too. And it was taken away from us. And there's a movement going on right now that shouldn't be quantified or qualified within, this basic jargon, which, historically has just confused people. So we are in the owned, side of the equation squarely. But, I have been talking about the shared economy for over a decade. The shared economy has been a precept of what the internet was capable of, and that is being able to use our energy more effectively, even from a barter and sharing perspective. And my interest in local certainly, necessitated my looking at, that type of economic arrangement. Now you have things like token economics that sit on top of it. So everything is there for us to execute as we've always wanted to. I'm sure, as we'll get into in the course of this conversation, the issue really is, what have we been up against, and why have the innovators and why have the entrepreneurs been prevented from, creating the solutions that really would drive not only, better local activity, but better macro news, better cooperation, not only domestically, but internationally. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. That's exactly where I was going to go, which is the promise was there, right? Web 1, we had the promise of this. It seems as if somehow we lost our way, that the promise of decentralization from the beginning was there. And then something happened to interfere with that. People got in the way. It wasn't as entrepreneurial as it could have been. What happened? Who interfered? Who got in the way? Who are the people who are stifling this sort of innovation, Justin?
Well, look, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see where search and social, for example, traffic goes through, or who owns, the devices, or if you want to go further into the, Internet of Things world, what we tend to use that's hooked up to the internet, and how that's been centralized. And the interesting thing for me, and why my dialogue is, I think, unique to other things that you might hear out there, is there's a certain level of that's important and it's necessary, because the quest for knowledge, the quest for truth, the ability to have confidence in data like mapping, or the information that we rely upon to send our kids to school, this shouldn't be debated or compete. This shouldn't be competition amongst those who have it and those who don't, those who have good stuff and those who don't. I hope we get there in this conversation shortly, but centralization when it comes to good data is really super important. I think the real bigger issues around Web 2 are, yes, we've got these trillion-dollar organizations, and that it's extraordinary how powerful they are. They're bigger than any nation state, for sure. Right. And it's we rely upon them. You go around the world, you see how reliant everyone is upon these same things. And everyone wants to, point the finger there that, hey, during Web 2, post this ideal, this quest for decentralization, these idealistic, concepts towards decentralization, the democratization of the web, we lost our way towards these big Goliath organizations that became, these centralized forces. Well, the reality, again, is I will argue, it's not that simple. As I suggested here, we need good, consistent knowledge. And so we need at some point to be able to agree upon things. And things like common protocols establish that. Common data protocols establish that. What has happened, though, is there's been a lot of greed that's formed around, this quest between the individual and knowledge, right? And it boils down to kind of access of sorts. And it's this, during Web 2, one's willingness to kind of take advantage of that knowledge gap, or take advantage of the space that exists between the user and, say, Google, for example, which you and I are intimately familiar with. We're all familiar with all these, actually. All humans are familiar with these things. We all use these things. Some just don't have access to it, right? But these things are ubiquitous in our lives. But it's the space between those things that we rely upon. They're critical. My wife is in the car right now. She's at a yoga class right now. She's going into her 7th month of pregnancy. I'm super excited about it. I get more nervous. Thank you. I get more nervous than usual. She's at a new place. It's a prenatal. Thank you, brother. It's a prenatal class and all that good stuff. This local data is super, super important to me. So the question is like, who's in the way of my house in that place? And during Web 2, it's not Google that got in the way per se at all. It's all those greedy and grubby hands that wanted to make sure that what you were looking at was they had access to, or they were privy to, or they were part of, and so a lot of those, that's where a lot of data was sold and is still being sold in the first place, and that's where a lot of misinformation occurs. And then, look, Web 2, the big problem here is it's an ad-driven world, Mark. And I was in Dubai last week, and I said, look, I said a lot of things are dead in the past. It would be funny to revisit some of those things. I would suggest, though, I've been accurate in that prognosis. Here, I said, I'm saying advertising is dead, Mark. It is. From a pure demographic perspective alone, it's just like to be given something that is going to take away and somehow convince me of something. It's just, and our internet is the Web 2 model is a ad driven model, and that requires data. And it's like the earnings per share, the hunt for just increases in earnings per share, which is shareholder pressure. It's not Mark Zuckerberg pressure. That's shareholder pressure. He's under that damn pressure.
Right.
So they need data to get better ads so people can click on them, which gets more dollars. And it's just this engine that starts to go. It's because we rely upon, ads to fund, frankly, the internet that has led to this issue. And so, people that want to just point a finger, it's pretty short-sighted. It misses a lot of dynamics that have collided over this last decade or so. And I think the ad model is being uprooted, and what we're moving towards is, a model wherein we reward the content creators, we reward people for their attention, we reward them for their time. So the eyeballs that we used to take advantage of, extract things from, information about, so somebody else could, monetize. Instead, this new economy, Web 3, is about saying, no, we value those eyes so much that our environment is about rewarding you directly. And in fact, the purists amongst us, we want you looking at things that move you, that you're passionate about, things that express your individuality, which is super important within, concepts of Web 3. So centralization, as we'll talk about, actually helps, certain types of centralization helps to ensure that takes place, helps to ensure that we have those freedoms to begin to, use the internet more effectively. So please go ahead.
No, I think if I could summarize what I'm hearing. So again, most people listening to this broadcast probably have never made a single transaction with cryptocurrency. But the idea is it's coming. There's a way of the future, and it's coming for everything in every sector of the economy. It's going to change how you buy goods and services. It's going to change how you invest. It's going to change how you go to yoga, to use your example, your options for entertainment. It will impact every segment of the economy. Once you start to notice these little use cases for this stuff, you can't stop seeing them. They come up over and over again. So it's only logical, I think. You and I have both been in local advertising and marketing for SMBs for a long time now, you longer than me, but it's only logical. This will inevitably change the business and the industry that I'm in. Do you agree with that framing? Have I framed sort of the summary so far accurately?
It will change the business that you're in for sure. It already has.
Yes.
That's part of the issue is that everyone's waking up to the fact that everything has changed and wondering what to do about it. On the digital currency side of the equation, this, like any other major kind of revolution, will take place in parts. And I like to start that conversation off by talking about digital currency, what it means. But before that, it's a wallet, right? Yeah. What does it mean to have a wallet if you're a small business? What does that afford you, right? Mm-hmm. What does that afford you with respect to storing things? What type of things? What form would those take, right? What would it afford you with respect to accepting things from others? Would it benefit revenue? What's the net value? What would afford you relative to storing your capital for higher interest, opportunities? This is where the real dialogue goes. And this is why you're here and I'm here, because the answers are really, really positive. The challenge, like it has always been, is getting people to pay attention, to the things that are really important. And historically, the reason why those that should be paying attention haven't, as I suggested, previously, is because we have a really busy channel and really greedy channel that wants to get their grubby hands inside of things. We call them, intermediaries, these middlemen. They're not necessary. It's 2022, and we can move somebody from point A to point B, whether we're talking about money or we're talking about knowledge, without having somebody in between, which will then in turn change the relative context of what it is that's trying to be achieved, whether it be from a timetable perspective or from a value perspective or even from a knowledge and education perspective. And that's the scary thing. And that's, what I think, we are waking up to as not only a nation, but a world, the ease by which that middle space is manipulable, and how critical it is for us to be able to create, this, what is referred to as this frictionless environment, this very transparent environment. But again, that's not, to mean that it's in support of criminals and it's in support of nefarious behavior. And that's where these dialogues start getting crazy. And, I'm afraid that like U.S. regulators, don't even know where to begin in terms of understanding these things. And that's part of the problem too, is that we've all gone so far, so fast, and we have nobody left to talk to, which is why we've just, moved to create the infrastructure and have started the process on our own. So in terms of digital currency for SMBs, it's going to be here. It's growing up just like the internet did in its, its own little circles, in this case, in the cryptocurrency markets. People are learning to trade. It's dangerous and scary. I can tell you, anyone that claims to have made money in that space, I would, number one, start to question the conversation henceforth, because it's full of losses, it's full of heartbreak. It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of money to be made, and everyone has made money at times. It's also dangerous, and it's just low volume, low market cap, so it's easily manipulable. And then what you're doing is you're trading invariably protocols based upon, tokens that are kind of created out of thin air. They're supposed to have value, they have function, but people don't even understand what function those things have. Is it a governance token, so therefore they should be participating in what the network's trying to do, or is it a utility token, which by nature is trying to stabilize value within some type of economic arrangement within the network? So people don't even know what they're doing, what they're investing in, and it's scary. But this is what happens when new markets are started. Exactly. You need this envelope pushing. I got started by looking at that. Others got started by mining Bitcoin. Right. And God bless us, because we're here now, and we know that blockchain has already changed the world, and it needs to change the world. It's the closest proxy that we have on Earth to absolute truth, right? Our ability to understand knowledge to its fullest. And the argument is that, let's stop trying to put walls around this knowledge. Let's share it in a manner that's not for one's, own purposes or one's own pocketbook. I'm going to try not to swear here, Mark. Instead, for the greater good. Yeah. For the greater good, right? Starting within our city, within our homes, then within our city, and then beyond. But our ability to now cooperate between here and Shanghai it needs to happen. It's in place, and all we have to do is snap things now, and agreeing upon common protocols that enable, when I say knowledge, I'm talking about science, I'm talking about environmentalism, I'm talking about immigration, I'm talking about health and welfare, I'm talking about the things that keep us from moving effectively, right? That are either slowed down by bureaucratic red tape, human discretion. These things can be removed vis-a-vis the blockchain, already have. The question is, how far are we able to take it from a cooperative perspective? And there's some areas that are further along than others. And then there's some that we have to just move around in certain ways based upon this until it just is. And we're kind of here right now.
I love it. Well, I'm going to agree with you on that. I find this, you're very persuasive, and you're preaching to the converted, to me a little bit, but there are skeptics, right? There are people who are out there who are skeptics. I found some tweets before. Crypto is a cult. Crypto is a fad that cannot die soon enough. People argue it's bad for the environment. There's sort of a political bent to this that I don't even pretend to understand. You have skeptics, or people are skeptical of this. What message do you have for the skeptics? What could you tell them to try and turn them around to the promise of this?
I don't generalize, and I certainly don't respond to people who generalize like that. So I don't want to waste my time. If you have a specific question there, I heard a number of issues. This is the problem too. It's just like Republican, Democrat, good bot, and it's, go look in the mirror, go cook a meal for your wife, and slow the hell down, right? Let's look at policies then. Let's look at specific issues, because if you find, you talk to the average person, we agree so much on issues, but when we refuse to actually look at those issues, instead we feel more comfortable with colors, and things of that nature. It's protective for us. And, the gig's up with Web3 in that we're not doing that anymore. It's all about trying to get to better information quicker and understanding who's holding these things hostage. So there's a lot of interest out there that would like to see the current systems continue to operate as is. And I think within those interests, you'll hear specific arguments. And so whether you're talking about Wall Street, or you're talking about Washington, or you're talking about local data on Google, you've got different parties that are all culpable to, preventing the realities of blockchain technology and the efficiencies and an inherent, the potential for equalities that is inherent within it, from surfacing adequately. And instead, they want to point to things like, hey, the crypto markets is bad for the environment. It's so short-sighted.
Right.
You know what's bad for the environment? Oil. That's bad for the environment. Pollution, that's bad for the environment. Oceans. And so the same people that have been sitting on fucking problems my entire lifetime are going to now point to my market as somehow being, ecologically unfriendly. Put those people in front of me, right? We laugh and scoff at the idea that Bitcoin mining, albeit it uses power, so without a doubt, we're talking about computational power. Without a doubt, we are talking about hardware. But think about what it's being saved. Nobody's thinking about in terms of the opportunity cost or the cost benefit of the whole thing, right? It's like, yeah, you have a cost, but what's the damn benefit? I can tell you that the relative cost, which everyone wants to focus on, is nothing relative to the benefit, right? Or the opportunity cost of not doing it, which is things like getting in our cars or pumping more barrels of oil, right? There's and this is the short-sightedness that bothers me. And this is the environmental side of the equation alone. You can pick a topic, any topic, with respect to those who are, naysayers about what's coming. But, I heard a lot of people back in the day that said the internet is a fad, right? I mean, we still probably have some of those. So how'd that work out for them?
Exactly. So, well, listen, I want to kind of shift gears. You're the last time you were on, if there was a headline out of our last conversation, it's that SMBs have been sold the wrong products. That was the overarching theme throughout our whole conversation. We touched on LSAs, we touched on some other things, but they're being sold the wrong products, and in turn, there's a bunch of negative downstream effects from that. Today, and in that conversation you mentioned, there are these middlemen and intermediaries, and they operate like shakedown artists. Do you know what I'm saying? So now enter SMBchain, now enter blockchain. How can this technology in Web3 disrupt that ecosystem that you discussed? That is really a nasty ecosystem, and put more control in the hands of the SMB.
Unfortunately for them, very easily. The question really fundamentally for us is how we're going to work with them, because there's great people within Web 2, and there's great people that are in positions, that, get paychecks, and, they have families, and we have to be very, very careful. Wall Street, it's not a game, right? And, people that are beating their drums and saying down, those are kids. Right. Decentralization without leadership, wrong world. Right. So there needs to be a way to do this that everyone can work together. I think that we're so fortunate to be here. We're so fortunate to have this opportunity, and nobody is at fault for how things are per se. We've all inherited a bunch of shit, I mean, you pick the topic, any topic, we've inherited it, but I think we're finally saying, I don't care whether you're 15 or whether you are 95, enough's enough. Everyone wants to play the generation. Well, we're the generation that says, you know, and yeah, okay, great. Well, I think we have a great generation. I think everyone should think that they have a great generation. But you know what? We all are saying right now, enough's enough. And it's not about fighting anymore. Certainly not about dropping bombs or coding against each other or coding against each other. It's about coding with each other, right? In this case, 3 coding with 2, right? Web 3 needed to cooperate, you know, what we're calling 3, which a lot of people will argue to stop doing that, Justin. But for simplicity purposes, you know, the movement around, you know, decentralized, you know, technologies and blockchain technologies and even the centralized portions of it, Web 3, it had a lot of battles going on internally, and it needed to work itself out, and largely has, I feel, you know, minus the regulatory side of the equation, which is going to get rid of a lot of fraud that's sitting within the crypto space. So you're seeing now us being able to turn back, and look what we're turning back to, something that we know so well, and we're really prepared. And, you know, SMBchain certainly, you know, addressing that, but I can tell you SMBchain is going to give birth to a lot of different companies. We already know which ones are coming first, and they're extraordinary business models. And so for us, it's about, let's get that first layer done. And that layer is all data. And so I have people that I haven't felt good about in the Web 2 space, you know, for the record, but they know who they are, you know, and it's not my place, you know, to in a one-sided manner start calling out specific organizations. In fact, if anything, I'll defend them. I would defend them right now, from Google to Microsoft, to, you know, the smallest agency, to people are doing reputation management wrong. I mean, it's not their fault. It's nobody's fault, you know. And the ones that are greedy, the ones that we're pulling, the ones that we're preventing innovation, they know who they are. They're the ones that need to be worried, right? And they're the ones that have been squeezed and will continue to be squeezed. They're the ones that will are pointing the finger probably at Web3 and say, oh no, right? I need to preserve this cozy environment that I have at the expense of everyone else. So, you know, again, those days are over. They've met their match. We have them. And so now, if that's the case, why would we have a war with what was underneath them? We don't. Our war was what was causing that greed. And you know what happens when you really distill it down. You're talking about the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. That's where it is. That's where it was. That's where it will continue to exist. And the idea that you can slip through, you know, a free democratic capitalistic economy and somehow, you know, create that much power within the context of the internet per se, at the expense, those days are gone. And I'm saying no more, and I'm saying no more with respect to that. I wish we start there, because it's going to go so far. I'm talking about these days, Mark, I think you'll like it, brother, a global, local data initiative from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe, and that's not rhetoric. The politicians speak rhetoric. We, the developing community, the developers, we speak truths. This is what we're developing towards. This is what we're doing. And when I say that, you know, that's an A to Z of data should be a right within each of these places. And what's so interesting, you know, in the United States in particular, is just like, oh yeah, I use this and I get to where I want to go, whether it's Apple or blah, blah. And like other places, they don't even exist, right? Or notwithstanding having their local place exist. And it's frightening. But it's also an opportunity. You can look at things and say, hey, I can't do anything about it. Or you can look at something and say, damn it, because of that, it's going to be easier for us to do something about it. And there's a big group of us that are starting there. And it's going to be, they're going to leapfrog, some of the, and I was just in the, Middle East and Northern Africa region, and I can't wait to continue to go back and see these places. But they're the ones that are most prepared to say, okay, yeah, I wasn't in that bullshit before. So therefore, yeah, let's just start doing the good stuff. And so we're going to be working with the people in the Web2 community, whether, wherever they are. But yes, they were sold the wrong products. They continue to be sold the wrong products. Yeah, I am angry about it. And, I think that for the purpose of this conversation, we can talk about the local organic stack, marketing stack, which is made up of 3 primary products: business identity products, which is I'll control your information for you; reputation management, and that's I'll be able to, make sure that your reputation online in face of your customers is taken care of by my kids. And then social media, which was this bizarre construct that when Facebook came along, that we're going to send something out that somebody cares about through the news feed of Facebook, which hardly anyone can control. And so those things, that why I'm so angry about that portion and why we're really going after that portion in particular, is because that's the free part. Google's the one that's paying the price right now. All of our friends at Google, right? All those years we spent with that organization. And I would like to talk to anyone. I listen to people. I've listened to interviews and people speaking out about G and capacity. I'm like, what are you saying? Like, really, do you know really what you're talking about? Like, trying to get an answer and what it means to really get the right answer quickly and effectively, and the criticality of that, and why having 2-3 different types of answers to something when somebody is, in the case of a service person coming into your house between the hours of 11 and 1 o'clock, when your wife's home alone and you don't know from what, do you know how important that is? This isn't something you fuck around with. Yeah. Right. And G has been there. And last time we talked, they're within the construct of the local service ads, and where they were solving that particular problem. And it's all about getting, better information, getting better data. But here you have a very, very busy channel, as I call it, which is made up of products, sales organizations, people that are attaching these products to whatever they have, because they're taking advantage of the fact that they think small businesses are too busy. They don't know how to deal with their Google profile. It's become too complex for them to deal with. And instead, they charge them hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of dollars, and they use jargon and unnecessarily, excuse me a second, I got to close these doors. They use this jargon unnecessarily, and it hurts everyone. Few people make money, but the consumer's losing, the locals are losing, and that's the issue. And it's been happening for a long time. It's like a microcosm that's been playing out all over the world. So you can take this analog to anything. To whether it be transportation or whether it be a media, whether it be, there's consolidation of forms that are happening and busy people in there that are preventing real access to the type of stuff that's really needed here on Earth to make progress on problems that we already know to be true. Right. And so I'm very much a fan of the, of everything that they have done. And I feel like they got a bad rap, and now they're going to be sitting in Washington with antitrust. And, they're sitting in front of regulators who are being advised by, I have no idea. The arguments I've heard from people advising the regulators, they make no sense to me. So I'm scared, like, what's going to come out of this, what they're going to decide to throw away. I do think it needs to be broken up, right? 91% of all, search directional traffic is happening through there, and there's ways by which to take it out. I mean, there's different assets within Google that they themselves and others will be first to say, yeah, that should have belonged here, and that really was the technology. That type of parsing can happen, but by the regulators or by those who actually have created it. And that's kind of what's happening now. Those who really are sitting above that kind of nation state are able to kind of look at the situation and deal with it. And when they do, they look at that middle ground and local, and they say, no more. No more should a third party be speaking on behalf of a business when it comes to their core business information. right? When they're open, how good that that deck was that was built, or how good that carpet came out, where that stain was impenetrable, we thought. And these basic qualitative, even quantitative concepts that get lost. No agency can represent that for the business. And all Google and even all of them, all the major local search providers, it's not the issue. In fact, if people realize this, we might have more competition amongst the other local search providers, and that everyone has this quest, this really strong appetite, this thirst, I should say, for good metadata, but it's not coming from the businesses. They don't have it, they don't provide it, and they certainly don't own it. It's coming from these people who have invented products that say, we're going to manage it for you. Well, did you wake up today with the winds blowing 80 miles per hour such that we didn't, open our doors? And were you able to tell my customers that? And this is why I go back to that concept of point cast, for example. In 1992, he understood that, hey, we can just push the most important things out. If I go to a place every single morning at 9 a.m., we already know these things to be true. If that place was not opening because the winds blew out, I don't need to do anything, search anything. I don't need to go to social. I don't need to pick up the phone. That could have just came right to me and say, hey, brother, we're not going to be here until, 2 hours later. We just wanted to give you the head start on that. Are you telling me, we're talking artificial intelligence, we're talking about all kinds of things, gaming, we're talking about the metaverse. And we haven't even figured out how the muffin place down the street can effectively get the information to me. That's what Web3 is about. It's us saying no more to all those things in between that are preventing that actuality from taking place. The same idealism that underlie.
Awesome. Well, now I really want to talk about SMBchain. Like, get into it a little bit, because in our first conversations, the thing I love about it is the promise of authenticity. That you said to me that in one of the first conversations, SMBs have outsourced their pulse, and it's scary. You mentioned on this conversation, the muffin example, that no third party can know about what's essential about your dry cleaners or the Chinese food restaurant, the egg roll at your Chinese food restaurant. How does SMBchain help give that authenticity back to the business owner? How can we return it back to them? And what more promise is there with SMBchain to return this to the business owner and to give the consumer a better experience about everything there is to know about that SMB?
Well, today they pay for it. So today, if businesses are going to succeed, because you have to be online to succeed, and if you're online, that means you have to be on Google, really. You have to be discoverable, whether it's somebody just looking for your name or somebody looking for your type of business. Hopefully, you need to be there. So it's kind of non-negotiable. But today they pay for it, and they pay for it. And it's intimidating. Not only that, but then they get called every single call. It seems so weird, right? From all these other companies saying, "Hey, no, I can do it better, and you can do it better." And so that's the as is. That's the current state of things. And there's a lot of fat cats sitting around, while that's happening. In this new world, the business is in charge. They're in charge of their own information, right? It's rather simple. You own the information that describes you publicly, right? We lock it down at SMBchain by way of a business NFT. We use a non-fungible token to express ownership, which is invariably transferable, right? It's also fractionable. We can do things with NFTs, even on the consumer side of the equation, but it allows us to use encryption, private and ultimately public key, to unlock, knowledge that we know to be certain about who is the originator of this content. It's so strange that literally we've told business owners and the people that work for them that, hey, you shouldn't be talking to Google and to your customers online about what's happening on a day-to-day basis. We have it for you. And anyone in the space knows it's impossible to have it for them because the margins are so thin, notwithstanding the lack of knowledge within what's happening within that business prevents it. So what happens, you placate the customer, and you come up with these really kind of effective, what we call intelligent ways by which to create content and send it out, and we say, hey, look, you got all this activity. Meanwhile, this activity has really nothing to do with the marketing services and agencies. And we're telling telling that story, and I'm going to go out there and tell that story, and it's going to be loud, lots of PR, lots of people involved. And it's like businesses, you need to take control of your basic information. It doesn't mean you need to sit in front of a computer in the morning for 45 minutes. That's really, really silly. The reason why I think that this has been terribly overcomplicated, Mark, is because the argument exists in that small business owners are too busy and it's too complex for them to do. Wait, hold on a second. These are the same small business owners that are on Facebook. They do posts now to their grandchildren or to their friends, or they're the same ones that are on Instagram or any other major tool. They're the same ones that are using email. They're the same ones that have been interacting with these devices forever. Are you really to suggest that they're incapable of doing those same things within the context of speaking of their business? Not only is it a lie, but it's hurting us terribly. It must come from them. They're the only ones with that knowledge that, hey, that yoga studio today, we're really cranking up the heat because today we have that sun coming in and blah, 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 which is going to create a condition that Nancy shouldn't be there today. So do you care about sending Nancy into the car with that or not? And you ask the average small business, they would say, of course we want Nancy to know about that. But, somebody else does that for us. Wait, do they do that for us? It's literally so silly. I've had enough. I literally had enough. So the business NFT locks it down, and then we publish it to a blockchain record. The blockchain record is going to take place, replace every, concept of a profile that you need to have. We call it unstoppable because it's the ultimate iteration. We're really going to be looking at this new RSS3 environment, the idea that we can push information to consumer bases that they want it, neatly and to be delivered to them right from profile structures without intermediaries is really, really important to us. But so too is the distribution of that content. We view Google as friendly, but we certainly view organizations like Nextdoor as equally friendly. And anyone else has been working really, really hard within the local space. Yelp is an example. They've been working really hard. I don't care what you think about them. There's those that have been working hard in it and are after, making these changes, and there's those that have been taking advantage of it, right? And so we're going to be at the table with those that, really want to make the local internet better for people. And if I hear, anything to the contrary, then, we're walking away and we're going to be taking names because we can't progress. We can't progress unless we can agree upon a core set of data. And what people see these days and how data is literally programming how we think and how our children think, it has become critical that at minimum we can agree upon the stuff that we rely upon when we get in our cars, or we pull out our strollers, or we leave our kids, leave their hands to their teachers at school. We need to be able to agree on the ground, the people around us, the things we interact with. Everyone in the world that is listening to this is doing things that are inherently local. You can't escape that fact. We're in the moment and it is local. So can't we agree to a base set of data that could help our lives, be more effective, enrich our day-to-day? That's what I'm after. And within that, Mark, is the opportunity to find new things. Right? I can, find that park where I can catch that snook at that right time of season because somebody put that metadata in, or somebody took ownership of that asset because it exists within the community. And I was after that work when I was working on Support Local, and and it's this ability to say that, hey, look, when you really deconstruct, I should say, local, right? You really deconstruct it. You're just talking about kind of people and places, and then the connective tissue, like time, and like in this connective tissue of experiences, and being able to, and everything else is just noise. So Web3 we're gonna put that all back together.
I can tell, and I want to mention something else from your speech in Dubai. You mentioned that content distributions are rewarded with SMB tokens. So in other words, there's going to be a reward for this it's incentivized. Those tokens can be exchanged in the network, for services, I imagine. And, when you get into this token, this is where this starts to go over my head and my understanding, but I can tell this is massively important. This is really the game changer. The tokens can be something that's very, very interesting. I want to give you the floor. Explain how this will work in practice. How do the tokens, how do this content distribution system work in practice?
Well, not only are they not paying for products that provide poor representation of the business, but we're actually incentivizing it. So the argument's been, hey, if you can't get the data, you might as well create products where you can, do it for them. They'll pay for that. It's so ridiculous. No, the answer actually is you pay them for it. If you really need it, which everyone does. Google needs it. Everyone needs it. Your wife needs it. Everyone needs it. So then if somebody's unwilling to do it, then you force it by giving them the ultimate incentive, right? And so tokens are a proxy for, in other words, they're a representation of value. That's all they are. And, there's lots of debate as to, whether they're a security under U.S., security laws, or whether, you can bypass these environments and create offshore organizations and, use these things and create, begin to trade them in liquid environments. And there's a lot going on here. And so I do not want to get into the details there. It is an extraordinarily important and tricky space, and it needs to be dealt with as such very, very carefully. For the purposes of this conversation, what I'll say is this: we are on top of it all, and we will be launching something equivalent to a token. Likely, it is going to be from the start, it's going to be really similar to a point-based system and structure, whereby, look, all you really are, if the thesis is that you're really just representing value, and then the value needs to be exchanged. It's valuable because somebody else recognizes it, and if it can be recognized in the face of another transaction, which is what will happen within SMBchain, within the network itself, in exchange for other services, then you have value creation in the face of tokenization. And so, the lowest common denominator for us is a really cool and interesting network that allows businesses, when they update their content, they have what's equivalent to token points. So they're SMB tokens, or token SMB points. And that's another thing that people tend to do. They're overcomplicating things and saying, oh shit, because of Ripple or because of this, there's no way I would touch, tokens. And you're doing that, so therefore SMBchain should be bad. I'm like, okay, no. No, you think I would be messing around with putting people in front of, in violation of securities law? I mean, I like to push the envelope as an entrepreneur, but certainly not at the expense of my family. And will not do so, but I will push the envelope. And we will, the key here is to transfer value. And today it's taking value away from SMBs and even individuals, because individuals are the product online. Take away from them. And what we're doing in Web3 is we're transferring value back to them and giving it to them. Our proxy in this space is token. And token economics is the most important thing that I've learned, I think, in my life, really understanding what's happening with token economics and how it unleashes real unique value in individuals, and it will underlie economic, frameworks, contracts, smart contract structures in the future. It will, period. So the question is kind of agreeing to what it looks like from a securities perspective. There's different types of tokens. There's governance that kind of support these things you're hearing about, like DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, where you have like staking involved, where the community itself is involved, is highly decentralized in some cases highly centralized, communities involved in making decisions. Well, that takes place by ownership of tokens on the governance side. And then you have something which is a utility token, which enables kind of transactional activity within network functions itself, wherein you have the idea that a utility token price would be fluctuating, be inflationary, is kind of contradictory to what you want in a stable functioning network. And then on top of that, you've got these things called, which is really the most important thing that people need to be paying attention to right now, and that's really stable coins. And that's using something, a digital currency, which is stable, as kind of a way by which we can, proxy a USD. A USD, we saw it in China with the digital yuan. That's the first major move there, no surprise. you're going to see the same thing happen throughout the world here. And you're going to see the involvement of new, centralized, bank digital currencies in the process, organizing around these things from a regulatory perspective. What that allows is, we get back to that question of, hey, a wallet, because that's part of our business too. We're going to help you get that wallet where you're going to store things like your business NFT, which represents data ownership, but it's going to provide the basis whereby you can now start to accept digital currency. And when you accept digital currency, you don't want, everyone thinks, oh shit, now I'm going to be entering this volatile, strange market on Binance. Where the hell is Binance anyways, and who owns it? No. You actually can fit neatly within things like, Circle is a very important one. Paxos, there's all kinds of organizations that have been fighting significantly. Tether is another example of them. And I want to go too far here because there's a lot of pressure here about kind of what backs these things and how stable is stable. But we've gone very, very far. We understand, from a collateralization perspective, especially knowing what we're up against, when we have no collateral on the fiat side of the equation. Here we actually are being held to, our feet to the fire, and we have answers, in saying that, look, this digital currency has the ability to provide stable value, so you can move money into it, and you can actually gain interest on these types of things really, really effectively and easily, Mark. And now you can start moving these base digital currencies around, things like USD, USDC, United States digital coin. You guys look some of these things up. I'm not here to create things on record when I bring up names and things. Very complex space, but this is the stable coins. And so when somebody talks about tokens, you got, again, like this thing about, hey, a lot of people are critics of the industry. It's like, okay, I'm not even going there. When somebody brings up tokens, it's like, I'm not even going there. Are you talking about staying within U.S. security laws right now? Are you talking about creating a business in BVI and doing things? Are you talking about our ability to spin something out in another country, which is pro-crypto, and allow our business? Because there's all kinds of ways to move around, but look, we're building what I believe to be the next, layer, the infrastructure layer on the web. And it's not for cowboys and Indians fighting. This is for real men who want, and women in particular, and we need more of, and more diversity and more, because that's what this is about. And this is about doing it right. And it's about laying the tracks that enable us more insight into the things that have caused pressure on what should be rather obvious, and from an access, to knowledge perspective, ability to transact perspective. Everyone is, questioning these ideas of, digital currency. Can you, what does it mean for somebody not to have access to your wallet and be able to, do things without the knowledge of somebody else using digital currency? Mark, it's so funny. And you just kind of go like, have you never used cash before? Because, isn't that what cash is? You take a whole bunch of money out and you can use it anywhere and nobody really knows, and receive no. And suddenly it's kind of a big deal. And so people really need to begin to level set what they're talking about here. The good news is, I'm prepared to lead that.
You are. And some other people are too. I think one of the things I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, a bet on SMBchain is a bet on jockeys, not on horses. You've got like this remarkable team that you're assembling. Every time I look at your social media, you've got a new team member who's like a luminary in this space or something like that. I just want to highlight the team that you've assembled there. Who's on board? Who's doing what there?
It would be unfair for me to start this process because they're that good. My success is purely a reflection of the people I surround myself with. And my knowledge comes directly of things that I'm able to absorb. And, people, I just find people so extraordinary. And in this case, it was so much rich, deep talent in every aspect of what it is we're attempting to do. So, whether we're talking about insiders at Google or whether we're talking about pioneers of protocols that underlie the communications on the web today, or, founders of technology that's ubiquitous. We have them. We also have it's very interesting. We're going to be launching around the world, as I suggested. And so, there's some really big markets there where, we're going to be out there, doing things in native tongue, whether, we did this before at local launch. We expanded throughout, throughout Europe, and we're going to be doing the same. You did? Okay, good. Yeah. I mean, Russia, Shanghai, India, South America. These data. Why is it that Fort Lauderdale would be any more important to us, knowing that this isn't about building the next centralized monster? We're creating our own DAO. I know we're creating the next major ecosystem. This ecosystem is not about the founders, which is why I'm not even going to mention them right now. And we're also a Wyoming state, which allows for that. Is that we want to reconstruct the internet in the right way for our legacy, for our children. For the things that have gone wrong, we want to get right. Everyone wants to put their hands in the air and say, okay, it is what it is, and that's the way it's going to be. And there's a lot of us that just said, no, we're willing to take the risk. And it's dangerous, We're willing to take the risk, though, and say no more. We can stand up to those powers to be those that have done everything they can to hold on to that power, again, from one side to the other. The preservation of power, only for it to be passed down. To those familiar with that power, those days are over. And the internet was to expose that originally, was to open up that access. And we're here to do that again. We're going to continue to fight for just that.
You're a fascinating person, and this is a fascinating topic. There's no way. I mean, we could do 3 shows an hour apiece on this. I want to stay up to date with this, and anybody watching, I'm sure you're going to get a bunch of new followers from this. If people are interested in you and SMBchain, how do you suggest they connect with you guys? What's the best way to get in touch with you and with the other members of your team?
Well, we're going to be out there pretty publicly in the next month with ways in which people can sign up. Community at the end of the day is everything for us. And it is going to be a big community effort. But at the same time, I want you to know that we're going to be sweeping the globe from a data perspective. And we've already begun the process. This is not going to be, Justin Sanger and a bunch of, luminaries, with their hands, bloody all the time. We've done the hard work. We're taking it back now. And so it's a lot of reconfiguring and repositioning. We've been at this model. SMBchain is not, it's not just launching. I first started this business in 2018, and I had people around me who understand exactly what it means to pull it together. The things that you don't see are you don't see for a reason. There's a lot of copycats in the space. There's a lot of people that want to get their hands in, and a lot of the technology that a lot of us wrote back in the early days has been taken advantage of. And many of us don't want to put stuff out there in the manner that we had in the past until we are certain that we have the path clear. And, I feel like many of us are more confident than ever that we have the right groups in place that are listening, and they span. When I talk about groups, we're talking about the majors themselves, both from, political perspectives, regulatory perspectives, as well as technology perspectives. You better be listening. The hackers are here, right? The people are here. And we care about our rights, not yours, ours. We care about access. You don't control our news feed anymore. No way, we'll take you down if you think your news feed controls our lives. You are not the porthole to my children or my wife or what I will do tonight. You only think you are. You only position yourself as such. And so, look, these things are changing, and leaders are standing up and that are brave. It's no longer engineers, though, Mark. Yes. It's artists. It's orators. We need people from all walks to stand up. From those with no access should be the ones standing up, loud, because we're coming for you. We're coming for you. You need access to information, to knowledge, to simple things, starting with, hey, let's get some basic data online about, businesses that can service you. During COVID, we have this just tremendous opportunity. We've learned so much. We've gravitated to the things that we care about the most, the people that are closest to us. We've learned how to work from home. We've learned how to trust. But what happened during this period of time is it put a lot of pressure on the internet, put a lot of pressure on the local internet to give us answers for things that we weren't looking for. And Google was racing. They were putting out all kinds of advanced, what's referred to as attributes about a business that will give you information about whether you can go there, whether you can get curbside pickup, you can do all these things. Well, guess what? All the agencies, all the products, they didn't make the changes on behalf of the business. Across the board, there's some that did. The smaller agencies, the qualitative ones, God bless them. I'm not talking about you guys, the ones that do great work, and that's why we're coming back with grace. That's why we're in control now, because there's so many good people out there. But broad-based, the people didn't have the right information. These cracks were exposed. And when we piece this thing back together in this post-COVID environment, we will not be going back to old. Whether it's the corporate real estate sitting in downtown somewhere that forces us in a box, or going back to the same technology that we know was made to rip off people only because they were incapable of understanding their jargon. Some of us say no more. We learned too much about the world during this period of time, and Web3 represents that. So all the naysayers can do what they want. They can't stop us. They call us a hydra. You cut us off at one point, we're coming back and coming back and coming back. So pay attention. And guess what? We're watching you now. We're watching you. And so how can you get involved? Talk to the person next to you. Talk to the person closest to you. SMBchain is not going to be the conduit for everyone to do what we're talking about. The conduit is within you. The difference about Web3 is it is about you this time. It used to be about them. You were the product to them. They were making money off of you. And then shoving you down a news feed to try to tell you how to think. And then we bitch about it. And then in the case of Google, it's like, and even in the case of Facebook, don't get me wrong, because I am a fan. The decisions that they made, they could have made so many easy decisions, basic filters, local filters, allowing for basic groups to happen within social structures. Social is going to start to segment quickly. I hope those guys are on their toes, because they can't fight progress anymore because of earnings. And they thought they could fight science for earnings. No way. And then science thought they could fight art. No way. We have this incredible opportunity right now. There's been a convergence, this wonderful, time, and it's kind of a heads up for everyone. It starts with you. It's understanding the types of things that I'm talking about and learning how to get involved. I'm not going anywhere. We'll be very vocal about this whole thing, and I look forward to it. I really appreciate your time and patience if you've gone this far. And Mark, you know how much I care about it.
Feelings are mutual. I'm here. And on a personal note, I'd love to see you like this. Like you're back. You're enthusiastic. You're passionate. Get your hands on the controls, and I'm going to have a front row seat to all this stuff. So I'm looking forward to watching you. And in the meantime, I'm going to have to sign off now. But Justin, thank you so much for coming on, and best of luck to you and everybody at SMBchain.